2012. This seminar is sponsored by the Department of Human Development and Family Studies at Michigan State University, and these seminars are offered in over 20 states around the country. We are in the role of translating research that's timely and useful to policymakers, and that is our sole purpose for being here in the Mackinac Room this morning. We have found some outstanding speakers who are able to communicate with you about the research findings and the ideas around juvenile justice, investing in success. We all are fully aware about our tight budgets, and so it's not only about effectiveness, but we also need to look at how economical and cost efficient our practices are. This morning, I would like to introduce our first speaker. I'm going to be very brief because of time issues here. Each of the speakers, the first speaker will have 10 minutes, but each of the other three speakers will have 20 minutes each. There will be time for a few questions after the speaker, and for those of you with questions, we are offering time after the speakers are all done with their speeches. The discussion format will allow you to ask questions at that time in detail. I'd like to introduce my colleague to you who will introduce the topic and a little bit about the Michigan terrain. He is Francisco Villarruel. Dr. Villarruel has been an outstanding colleague who has invested a lot of his scholarship around juvenile justice issues, around Latino groups. He has spoken to numerous groups around the country, testified in policy areas, and is our expert within our department and also in our state. We're very fortunate to have him. He has been committed to the area of youth development, and he is a founding faculty member of Great Plains Idea of Youth Development Programs. He is teaching a lot about youth and culture, and he's always up to date on the latest information. In fact, just about 15 minutes ago, he's showing me the latest information that's coming out of Connecticut or whatever. So if you want to know the latest research, who's doing extraordinary things in the area of juvenile justice, seek out Dr. Villarruel. Please welcome him as our first speaker.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. In 10 minutes, I have to try and describe what has taken us over 200 years to create. And what we are charged with is redeveloping a system that has not entirely met the needs of children across the nation, as well as in Michigan. If we go back 100 to 1899, the juvenile justice system that was established in this country was to give youth an opportunity who were engaged in what we consider to be aberrant behaviors. And so the challenge amongst us today is how do we meet, given the changing times, the developmental needs of youth to help them transition to successful young adults in our communities. The pillar of the topic that we have to focus on, however, is how can we do this in a cost-effective way, in a way that also creates the types of desired outcomes that we want. As in any aspect of human development, we all have ideas about what should be done and what could be done. The question is, can we make this a scientific approach so that we're not basing it on one person gets one thing or one community gets a different approach, but where we create optimal outcomes based on a systematic approach. We must invent in programmatic initiatives that benefit more children and youth in a cost-effective manner that produces these types of outcomes. Let's take a couple of moments to consider some of the issues that not only Michigan faces, but also that are evident across the nation. First, research tells us that while violent juvenile crime has remained steady for at least a decade, the number of youth formally introduced to court systems and juvenile justice system programs continues to increase. For decades now, states and local jurisdictions have reported that youth of color enter and stay in juvenile justice systems for longer periods of time than non-Hispanic white youth who commit the same crimes. For example, national figures show that the rate of black youth who are referred to the juvenile justice court delinquency is 140% greater than for non-Hispanic white youth. Researchers have noted that contrary to popular belief, these trends cannot be entirely attributed to disparate involvement in crime. Rather, these disparities more accurately reflect the combined result of policies and practices that do not consider their racially disparate impact. Law enforcement agencies across the nation report that more than 2 million juveniles were arrested in 2008. And although effective interventions to reduce criminal behavior have been developed and validated over the past 20 years, only 5% of high-risk offenders currently are treated in programs that have been proven by rigorous research to be effective. Many intervention policies intended to reduce delinquent behavior have an unintended consequences of increasing antisocial behavior. Effective programs that are rehabilitative and use intervention techniques with youth in their natural environments actually contribute to lower levels of recidivism rather than secure detention placement outside of their communities. In 2008, approximately 25% of juveniles arrested in the United States were for violent offenses such as robbery, rape, aggravated assault, murder, or manslaughter, and property theft. However, in that same year, in 2008, of the youth eligible for processing in the juvenile justice system due to their arrest, 66% were referred to the juvenile court and 10% were automatically waived to adult courts. The most serious and costly outcome of court referral following arrest is residential placement. For example, in secure detention facilities, wilderness programs, residential treatment centers, correctional institutions, and group homes. In 2007, approximately 160,000 juvenile offenders were placed in residential treatment programs. It is estimated that there are currently approximately 2,574 juvenile offenders who have been sentenced to life without parole for their crimes. Of the 7 states with the highest number of juveniles who have life without parole, that accounts for approximately 72% of all youth in this nation, and Michigan is number 2 in terms of its placement of youth in life without parole. Communities throughout the nation, including Michigan, have funded and continue to invest in programs that are not only ineffective, but may also increase and contribute to increased criminogenic involvement. Processing juvenile offenders through the juvenile justice system, including transferring them to adult criminal court, shock incarceration, such as scared straight programs, and residential facility programs have all been through rigorous evaluation and research, and they have been shown to be ineffective, yet we continue to invest in these programs. Surveillance of juvenile offenders, including probation and parole, doesn't seem to have a detrimental effect, but there is limited and mixed evidence on the benefits. Michigan spends hundreds of millions of dollars in juvenile justice services each year, but does little to link funding with performance outcomes. Other states in the Great Lakes Basin have shifted their juvenile funding to community-based services which are less costly and more beneficial for youth in the long run. In Michigan, the County Child Care Fund is a program with the Department of Human Services that reimburses counties 50% of all eligible programs that serve neglected, abused, and delinquent youth. However, in Michigan, what we know is that the majority of these funds are used to pay for costly out-of-home placement. Why is this approach important? Consider what can be learned from the efforts of other states. Delinquency prevention programs can save taxpayers $7 to $10 from every dollar that's invested, primarily in the form of reduced spending on prisons. In fact, if you look at the data from Washington State, they found that doubling the current investment in high-quality prevention programs could eliminate the need for additional adult prison in the future. The most effective programs in reducing recidivism and promoting positive life outcomes for youth are administered at the community level outside of the criminal or juvenile justice system. Some of these programs have been shown to reduce recidivism by 22%, potentially yielding a cost saving of $1,900 to $31,000 per youth. Today we will hear from 2 national experts whose expertise in leadership and research have contributed to the successful cost reform of Illinois and throughout the nation. Ms. Betsy Clark from Illinois has provided leadership and guidance for Redeploy Illinois, which has lowered the number of commitments by an average of 51% over the first 3 years and saved $18.7 million in Illinois. While Illinois is not alone in these efforts, Michigan should learn from the experience of these states. For years, policymakers have discussed strategies to realign resources in a way that creates an incentive and Michigan courts to use in-home care services, such as potentially increasing the reimbursement of 75% to programs in Michigan would not only contribute to Michigan's economy, but would foster the contribution of these youth to our state. As you will hear, states that have implemented these kinds of community-driven models have achieved fewer youth in out-of-home placement, cost savings at the county and state level, reinvestment in community-based and in-home care services, improved measures for youth well-being, mental health, and family functioning, and more importantly, reduced recidivism and community safety. There is no doubt that Michigan's budget crisis forces us to reassess the juvenile justice system's programs in Michigan. Other states provide helpful cost-saving examples by shifting resources away from expensive residential institutions and investing in effective, cost-efficient, community-based services. To help provide a better overview of this topic, or of the issue that we need to consider, it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Jeffrey Butts. When you look at the juvenile justice landscape in the United States, Dr. Butts is one of 4 names that comes to the top. His experience from the Urban Institute to the Chapin Center and now John Jay College is one that many practitioners and scholars around the nation foster. He's one of the few people in this nation who has challenged us to look at the notion that juvenile justice youth also need youth development programs. His focus on trying to promote the well-being of youth is one that we in Michigan need to follow. So, Jeff, welcome.